right. Hello. How's everyone doing? Good? Woo! Okay, I'm Dan. I'm here to talk to you about serverless Slack bots with Azure durable functions. I know there's a few Azure users here. Could I get hands up if you use Azure at all? One. I know there's more. I've met you. There. Durable functions are a framework for stateful serverless processing on Azure. So it's quite a useful general thing to know about, just beyond the specifics of the framework. So I'm Dan. I'm a senior developer in private credit at M&G PLC, and we're a big investment management company. We've got some presence in Italy. I don't know if anyone has heard of us here. I've written a couple of books, so feel free to go and, if you like the talk, go and buy them. If you don't like the talk, review them terribly. I have a blog, and I'm on Twitter, but I forgot to put my handle on. It's just danbassdev. Feel free to get in touch, read the blog, whatever. So let's get straight into it. So this is a sort of case study talk. So M&G, we're a big investment management firm, and the way investment management firms work is that you trust us with your money, and we invest it to try and achieve whatever goals you want to achieve. So sometimes that's saving up for retirement, sometimes that's saving up for like a kid's education, but generally that's the sort of idea. So that doesn't necessarily mean trying to get the most return possible, because a lot of people want stability over absolute return, etc. Now in our company, we have a range of roles, and one of the roles is the fund manager, and they're sort of the producer of the product, if you like. And what they do is they take the money that you give them, and they invest them into assets. And we call them assets because we expect to make more money from them than we put in, hopefully. When they buy assets, that's called a trade. And you might have seen in the movies and stuff, like traders with 15 screens and loads of different colors and stuff. So they don't do that. They tell people, please could you trade this for me? And then they go off and do the crazy screens. We've also got other roles in our company. So we have analysts, and what they do is they build up like an in-depth expertise in a sector of the economy. So you might, for example, know all about infrastructure. So bridges, airports, that sort of thing. You know everything that's going on in that sector. And the reason why we have that role is it's just impossible for a fund manager to know every single asset in the entire world. So what they can do is just consult with these analysts. I want to buy, I think in general, infrastructure that's good. Who are the best companies? And they can sort of get that advice. Now, when a fund manager places a trade, in general, they're placing the trade individually. It doesn't necessarily, you don't know for sure that everyone in the company who could do with knowing about that trade knows about it. So if a fund manager sells all of their infrastructure assets, then the analyst who covers infrastructure probably wants to know about it. It's entirely possible that they might not. And then, that's not great. They've not got a complete picture of the information on that sector. Also, fund managers, wider teams, when they place trades, they'll want to know about the trades as well. That's trying to avoid, it doesn't happen very often, but you could have double booking, for example, someone putting a trade, not knowing someone else has put it in, putting in another one, that sort of stuff. The general problem is called trade awareness, and I found one individual customer. So there's lots of solutions to this problem. It wasn't like there wasn't any solution whatsoever. No one knew when a trade happened. Of course, there were solutions to it. One particular solution I found was a manual one. It was one of the analysts on one of the teams, and he sat down every morning for half an hour and went through all the trades from the previous day and filtered them for his team. He worked on the infrastructure debt team, actually, and constructed this manual report and then sent it out. So half an hour every day in the morning for a financial analyst. And needless to say, he wasn't very happy with that. It's not something to really look forward to. So what do we look at to solve this problem? Well, we need to think wider scale than just solving this one person's problem, because obviously we could just write them, some little script or something that he runs, and it would do basically the same thing. But we're thinking, well, this is a wider problem in our business. People are solving it in lots of different ways, fragmented, et cetera, and we want it to require as little effort as possible. So we decided to use durable functions as part of our solution. So durable functions are pretty cool. They basically let you, the core thing that they really add to serverless is they create a new type of function, which is a stateful function, which is called an orchestrator. And what that does is after you write every line of code, it stores the results permanently in a persistent store, like a database that it uses behind the scenes. So that's pretty cool, because what you can then start doing is orchestrating long-running workflows without having to use like a server that actually sits there all the time, or having to use choreography to sort out your events. So you'll see in a lot of event-based architectures, you've got, oh yeah, so this publishes an event here, and then that event goes on to that, and then 15 events down the line, my business process is resolved. And that's cool, that's great. But when there's a problem with that, trying to just keep all of that in your head and debug it is a nightmare. So what durable functions lets you do is simply use some lines of code which calls each function in order without losing any of the scalability benefits of having it distributed. And you can debug them using normal programming tools. So just a standard debugger will work for a durable function. So here's the durable orchestration that we used. So to kick it off, we've got a timer. So that kicks off every morning. We go off, we get the trades. So we call a normal Azure function, so same as a Lambda or whatever. And that goes off, gets all of the trades for the past day. Then next, we go off and get all the configurations. So I'll show you a little bit more about what that means in a minute. But basically, that's where, rather than just our one user, we can serve hundreds of users. They can go in and configure their own notifications to their own standards. Then for each one of those configurations, we filter the trades according to that, and then we send it on to Slack. So they can choose a channel or whatever where they want it to go to. So sort of show. I haven't included my red boxes on this one to make it easier to read. So this is the actual code for this durable orchestrator. And you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to have to point. Sorry, everyone at the back, you can only see it on there. But you've got your first two lines here. And what they're doing is calling an activity called durable activity retrieve trades. So that's going off, sending a request. And really under the hood, what that's doing is that's actually putting a message on a queue and then waiting for a message on a queue back. It's doing retries as well, so it's actually got its own poison message queue that it's monitoring, and it's very reliable with a single line of code. I mean, the only real thing extra that you've done here is you've got your yield and your call to the durable functions SDK. So, and then this continues. So we've got notification configs here, go get those. Then we've got a simple for loop, and so on, and we filter the trades and send them off. So this entire could be quite complex interaction is actually, I can just debug this line by line in TypeScript. You can write them in C# and F# and JavaScript as well. But this VS Code, someone can just get started super quickly with this. So another thing that's sort of a side benefit that I thought might be interesting here at this conference is to actually maintain the notification configs is quite an interesting serverless app just on its own. So this is an entirely serverless create, read, update app, which is very useful in our sort of enterprise setting. You imagine investment management, finance, with security is like a very high focus for us. And what we've got here is clients on phones or desktops or whatever, and they basically visit a React app, which is stored in a storage account. So if you use AWS, that's S3, CloudFront, that sort of stuff. That React app then forces our users to log in using Azure Active Directory. So that basically completes all of our security requirements, and has all sorts of cool features about spotting bots and all that sort of stuff. Then only when they're logged in do they have a token which they can call the Azure functions with. So we've got one function per operation, create, read, update, delete, and then that sticks into a database which is called table storage. So that's super cheap, super fast storage on Azure, yeah, it's probably the only truly serverless, like usage-based database on Azure. Most of the other ones require some level of always on. So I love using table storage for stuff for that reason. And then here's a few quick bits of what it looks like. So we use React and Material UI, looks nice and snazzy. And you can go in, your classic sort of create, read, update, delete. You're just going in and maintaining some stuff. So why do we use this architecture, particularly at like a large enterprise like ours? Well, one of the big things that we all, that finance institutions in particular always have a problem with is security. And serverless architectures are actually super secure because you're not having to maintain any of the underlying infrastructure. That's your provider's problem. So it's generally a lot more secure than, for example, shipping like a container. If you look through like the top 10 Docker images, the list of vulnerabilities in those is pretty horrifying, and I see a lot of people, will just go and clone that, there we are, off we go. And whereas with Azure Functions, for example, that's battle tested, very, very secure. It's very scalable, so as our business grows, we're growing internationally at the moment. This app will just grow with them. We don't need to do anything. Rapid development, scale to zero. So what's amazing about this is me and 2 graduates who are just starting, and we delivered it in 6 weeks. And it's quite a complex application, but really the reason why we delivered it was not because we're super clever or anything like that. It's because we didn't have to worry about anything but the business logic. So it makes the problem super easy compared to having to maintain your own infrastructure, etc. So the result. So now when a fund manager places their trade, the analyst can set up an every morning notification which will tell them the next morning, or the fund manager's team can actually set up notifications for every hour, so they get quite a fine-grained response. You could set it up even tighter. Our users didn't really want to be berated by notifications all day. Our customer is happy. He doesn't have to come in the morning and do this thing anymore. In fact, even better than that, his whole team can view it when they're on the train on the way in, which was never previously possible unless he was going to wake up super early, which he didn't fancy doing, to do a job that he didn't want to do. Cool. So I'm just going to whip through a couple of problems. So some of the problems that we had with this was slow loading times. So we had cold starts being mentioned earlier, and it's definitely an area which Azure sort of suffers with a little bit more. There's a lot of progress been made. Mikhail does a lot of work. He's the person responsible for that chart earlier. He's been doing a lot of work with the Azure Functions team, and it is a lot better. But we had some pretty tragic cold starts coming through. So 12 seconds in length. I've given it away. I was going to ask you, what do you think it is? But it's cold start. So about 12 seconds in length. And the reason was I opened up our node modules folder, and it had 60 megabytes of stuff in it, which is not good in any stretch, really, even outside of a serverless application. So to deal with this, what do? Well, basically, rewrite the code as much as you can. So we did that. To some extent, though, it becomes, particularly when you're dealing with dates and times like we were, it's very useful to use a library to just know it's going to work rather than trying to implement your own, watching out for British summertime and all that sort of stuff. And then we also introduced Webpack. So that's pretty useful if you're doing any sort of Azure Functions development with TypeScript or JavaScript. Webpack is your friend. It definitely reduced our package size massively. It went down to like a tiny size, so it was below a megabyte. Cool. So future extensions of the system. We sort of want to do, so this is very much like a ping sort of system, one way going into Slack. What we really want to look at is where durable functions are really great is the fact that you can wait infinitely for an event. So if I send off an email or a Slack message to someone with a button saying, approve or whatever, the stateful function will just sit in the state that it's currently in, waiting for that event to arrive. And when it arrives, it will resume immediately and carry on doing whatever the next thing it wants to do. So as a rough sort of demonstration of what this would look like, you'd have send off an interactive message. So rather than sending trade notifications that are just ping, here's a trade, maybe you could send ping, here's a trade, discuss with this fund manager or something like that. Slack user replies to it, and then we do something, logging a response or whatever, and then you can just continue that. So if you want to send more interactive messages off the back of it, whatever. So that I think could work really nicely. We're starting to work on it now, and that's another benefit of this sort of durable functions extension. So if you want to use something like durable functions, but you're not on Azure, AWS step functions are similar. The only difference really is that code versus GUI sort of look. So step functions are very GUI based. I do personally really like the code based thing. You can just use proven, battle tested debugging kit rather than a GUI, which once it gets to a certain level of complexity is pretty hard to use. And that's everything. So M&G's hiring. Please do visit our careers site, and thank you all for listening.